All right, so today we're diving into a really fascinating story. It's about a company called ABV Group. And get this, they went from selling towels to investing in tech apps in just a little over a decade. It's a wild story about weaving an entire business, not just fabric. So, their motto is Weave the Future, Build Global. And, that really captures their ambition perfectly. It was never just about making textiles, it was always about strategically weaving this huge global business network. That idea, it's literally the thread that runs through their entire journey. And that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth does a textile startup become a global investor in just over a decade? I mean, that's incredibly fast. It's a story all about speed, smart strategy, and this relentless drive to keep evolving. So how they do it? Well, let's jump in at the very beginning. Okay, so every great story has an origin point, and for ABVGRP, it all picked off with one single focus: textiles. But, and this is key as you're about to see, they had their eyes on the global prize from day one. Just look at the speed here. It's pretty wild. They founded the company in 2012 and were already exporting within a single year. By 2014, they're breaking into the really competitive US market. And just 1 year after that, they're not just selling stuff anymore. They're creating and registering their own unique designs. This wasn't some slow, cautious start. No way. This was an all-out sprint right from the get-go. So think about that. In just 3 short years, they went from a local startup to an international supplier with a footprint across multiple continents. That early global foundation, well, that was the key to absolutely everything that followed. All right, so let's see how they built on that foundation. Because, it's one thing to just sell your products all over the world. It's a whole different ballgame to build a respected global brand. And this next phase, it was all about solidifying their reputation and seriously expanding their influence. And this number, wow, it really shows you the scale they achieved. We're not just talking about selling to a few countries here and there. They built a robust logistics and consulting network that spans over 40 nations. That kind of reach, that gives you a massive competitive edge. Now, this was a total game changer for them. The OECO-Tech certification, it's a huge deal. It's a prestigious global standard that basically guarantees textiles are safe and high quality. For consumers, that's a massive mark of trust. And by becoming the first and only Hammam towel manufacturer in the world to get it, they immediately shot to the top. It positioned them as an industry leader who was dead serious about quality. And the brand building just kept on rolling. They started showing up at all the major international fairs, making their presence known. They opened their very first retail shop. Then they landed a massive deal with C&A, getting their products into stores all across Europe. And, super importantly, they protected their identity by trademarking their brand, Choppets. Every single one of these moves was a smart, calculated step toward building a name that would really last. But here's where the story takes a really interesting turn. Just as they were cementing their place at the top of the textile world, they did something pretty unexpected. They decided to pivot hard. This is the moment the story shifts from being about a successful manufacturer to becoming a modern, diversified group. We're talking a full-on parent company that owns and manages a whole portfolio of different businesses. And this really lays out that pivot perfectly. You see, on one side, you've got the original model. Pretty simple, right? One brand, one focus. But then on the other side, boom, you see this explosion of complexity. We're talking new brands, retail operations, a whole new corporate structure. This was a very conscious decision to diversify, to make sure they weren't putting all their eggs in one basket. And that's what led to the creation of ABV Group as the parent company, this big umbrella over everything. And it's important to know, this wasn't just a name change. It was a fundamental restructuring of the entire business. It's what allowed them to manage all these different ventures at once, to start thinking more like an investor or a portfolio manager, and less like just a manufacturer. So with that new structure locked in, they hit the ground running. They started launching a whole slate of new brands, each one aimed at a very specific niche. You had Since 1980.co for home textiles, then Atelier Chaputs for fashion, and Saudade for the growing sustainable products market. They were strategically diversifying their product lines to grab a bigger piece of the pie. Okay, now we get to the most recent chapter in their story, and honestly, this is where it gets really interesting. Because they weren't just creating new textile brands anymore. They started looking completely outside of their original industry and began investing in the future. And right here, you can see that major shift in thinking in action. They started using their capital to invest in tech startups, things like a CRM tool for businesses, a travel tech app, and even apps for well-being and relationships. This shows you they're not just thinking about next year's product catalog. Nope, they are placing strategic bets on where they believe the world is heading. And it didn't stop with just investing. They started launching entirely new service-based businesses of their own. They're leveraging all their experience to offer things like consulting for new companies and services for trade fairs. They're even building out new digital B2B platforms. They are literally transforming from a company that just makes things into a company that also does things, providing their expertise as a valuable service. And this move really highlights their two-pronged strategy perfectly. So on one hand, they're expanding into tech and services, but at the same time, they're still innovating back in their core business. This acquisition of Cottonwood, for example, that strengthened their manufacturing roots by adding cool, unique new products. It's all about building the future without forgetting where you came from. So, that leaves us with this one big question, doesn't it? In just a little over a decade, they went from a simple textile startup to a massive, diversified, global group with its hands in manufacturing, retail, services, and technology. It is an absolutely incredible story of evolution, and it really makes you wonder, what's the next thread they're going to pick up?